Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Coffee with the Pastors.
Yeah. Show off
Oh,
our matching
Our
mugs.
matching mugs.
His better half, her better half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a gloomy, rainy day here in Virginia, but hopefully you got something cozy inside. Um, so I've been thinking a little bit about the book that we're doing in faith formation at the Oakton Church of the Brethren right now, Canoeing the Mountains by Todd Bolsinger. Todd was supposed to be one of our guest presenters at annual conference this summer, Church of the Brethren annual conference. He's going to come and present that next summer now. So we'll be looking forward to that. But in the meantime, we got a group of folks reading his book, which is really a book about adaptive leadership and negotiating changing times. Canoeing the mountains is a metaphor to the way Lewis and Clark embarked on their westward journey to discover a path to the Pacific Ocean. And they took their canoe, expecting things to be like the rivers and streams of the East Coast and the early exploration there. And what did they discover? They discover the Rocky Mountains. So canoeing the mountains, just take your canoe over the peaks of the Rocky Mountains, is a much harder endeavor. So you have to learn to adapt. You have to change. You have to have leaders that are self-reflective. What the book is saying to the church is that you are in a time of critical change. You've been in a time of critical change. And I think this quote from Daryl Gooder at the very beginning of his book explains that well. He says, if Western societies have become post-Christian mission fields, how can traditional churches then become missionary churches? So we're in an era where we are missionaries again. Mm-hmm. There's no assumption that the world around us is Christian or churched or has any of the same connotations of what some basic Christian lingo even means. Mm-hmm. It's a different world, and we have to adapt and adopt some new skills. We're not taking our canoe anymore.
Yeah, so I think the key word there is assumption. The image of Lewis and Clark with the canoe is that they assumed that the tools that they had would continue to make it possible for them to journey through the terrain, but they weren't fully aware of what the terrain was going to be. And so the key of adaptive leadership is less about finding or learning all the right answers to the problems before you set off on the journey. It's more about learning the skills to think on your feet, to adapt quickly to problems, and to not expect that you have all the answers as you journey out. So it's a shift in assumption, because you have an assumption, but the assumption, instead of I have everything I need to answer the problems, is to say I can't anticipate the problems, and so there are going to be times where I need to use different tools in my toolbox, and not assume that the canoe that I have is the right tool even when I'm facing a different kind of problem. So that was a shift in our seminary education. Our seminary education was less about, like, here are the theological problems and church
categories of ministry.
Right.
Master each one.
Yeah.
You're good to
yeah.
go.
Exactly. Yeah. But was more about here are some of the challenges that are facing the contemporary church, and here's what it means to be a leader that doesn't have necessarily the right answers, but knows how to ask the right questions. That was one of the things that we talked about in my first week of my doctoral classes, was on adaptive leadership. And we were talking about how leaders need to not ask or not answer the questions, but learn how to ask the right questions. Mm-hmm.
We could do a whole series on Coffee with the Pastors of asking the questions of adapting to the change, right? Or
yeah,
and analyzing it. We'll store that.
That's right. Well, because we're talking about canoeing in the mountains, we got some bad canoeing jokes for you. Can I do the first
Yeah,
one?
go ahead. I was worried I couldn't deliver the first one.
Yep. Before my surgery, the anesthesiologist asked if I'd like to be knocked out with gas or he could just hit me over the head with a canoe paddle. It was an either or situation.
It's a thinker, isn't it?
Either or. Get it?
All right, here you go. Did you hear about the huge sale that they just had on canoes? It was quite the ordeal.
Ordeal.
This was quite the ordeal.
Yes, that's right.
Have a great day.
Yes, enjoy. We'll see you later.